So it's 2009. You've just sprung, or in my case, I had just sprung finally for an iPhone and bought a 3GS. What do you do for music at home in this era? Well, you're likely still listening to CDs most of the time. You might have an iPod. This one's a little later. This is a 6th generation Nano, but I had a 1st generation Nano still kicking around at that time. And a classic, I think. You might have networked music. That's about when this Squeezebox radio is from. And that uses locally networked music saved on your home server. You might be using some sort of iPod dock. Now, this is, of course, an iPod HiFi, and I've talked about this in the Squeezebox radio and other videos, which I'll link below. This was old hat by this point, and newer technologies, the B&Ws and the Bose iPod docks were pretty standard things. And Bluetooth, while it exists, is only really a technology for hands-free calling. But a lot's happened since then, and one of the things you can do with an old device like this is to put some sort of adapter in it to make Bluetooth function. And now, even something as old as the iPod HiFi starts to become a viable device to use, getting on 18 years after it was introduced. So I have been wanting a Bluetooth adapter for this for a while, because I also keep it connected up to a TV above. So I wanted something that I could use, and I ordered this one because it listed the iPod HiFi as a possible companion piece for it. So in other words, this was listed as compatible with the iPod HiFi. So I'm going to bring this up, we'll bring it upstairs, and I'll talk about what the limitations are of using Bluetooth with the iPod HiFi, and why, in particular, why not every 30-pin Bluetooth adapter is going to work. So to talk about why not all 30-pin adapters will work with the iPod HiFi, it's important to talk a little bit about the history of the 30-pin cable standard that Apple uses, the dock connector that Apple developed. And as you'll see, this cable has a USB plug on the end and was designed to charge, I think this one probably came with this or this, I can't remember, designed to charge it from a USB charger or connect to a USB port on your computer like we're used to. But these didn't start out as USB devices. They started out as FireWire devices because the original USB 1.1 protocol devices that Apple shipped that standard didn't carry a sufficient data rate in Apple's view for loading a hard drive size player, even of the 10 gig or so size that was available at the time. And so that meant that they needed a faster standard, and the faster standard was FireWire, which fortunately shipped on all modern Macintoshes in that era. Now, FireWire carries data at 480 Mbps, I believe was the standard that was being used at the time. Much faster, about the same speed as USB 2. And USB 2 is what these support. This might support FireWire too. This is a second to last generation classic, and unfortunately the hard drive's dead in this one, and I haven't quite convinced myself to spend the money to get an adapter and get it working again. The characteristic of, FireWire is faster, but FireWire also has another useful characteristic. FireWire carries 12 volt power, and USB carries 5 volt power. And early Apple iPods were designed to charge at 12 volts, not 5 volts. Later ones, this one for example, will charge at either 12 or 5 volts, But even later devices, especially once they took the spinning hard drives out of them, charge at only 5 volts. Now, cue the iPod HiFi. The iPod HiFi is from that intervening period where Apple was switching to USB, but the charging, the charging was still via FireWire. And what that means is that the iPod HiFi does not have a 5-volt charging rail. So one of the advantages of using a 30-pin cable is Apple didn't need to use them all, and they knew that they could make different pins do different things over the years. So one of these pins, 2 of these pins presumably carry the USB signal, or 2 pairs of pins, more likely, and then there's a ground, and then there's 5 volts. And there are 30 pins, but they can be used for other things. Some carry video, some carry audio. Yeah, right. So that's how this works. Now, when you get to a device like this, if it's a more recently designed device, it will only charge via 5 volts, which is reasonable. This only charges by 5 volts. This works perfectly in the iPod HiFi, but the iPod HiFi won't charge a 6th generation, I think, if I remember correctly, Nano. This one I got when Apple recalled my 1st generation Nano for battery failure, and I'm actually always been upset that I sent it back because I loved the 1st generation Nano. In other words, you need to buy an adapter here that supports 12 volts, and the only way you can really do that is by finding one that lists the iPod HiFi as a compatible device. And the only one that I found, at least poking around on Amazon, is the Invery branded one. And I just got this morning. I haven't really done much with it except plug it in, turn it on. It's got a little switch to turn it on and off, and pair it. And as far as I can tell, it works fine. There's not much to say. It's a Bluetooth adapter, right? But this one must support the 12-volt power rail to power itself. And actually, it gets a little warm when it's operating, which suggests that there's a buck converter in it to drop the voltage down, or just a regulator maybe. I don't know. This doesn't look easy to take apart to look at. So, I don't know if I'd recommend it yet, but this one does work. If you search on Amazon for the Invery 30-pin Apple dock connector adapters, this one is there, and you can find the one that supports the iPod HiFi, and you should be in good business. I'll let you know if it fails on me. All right, thanks for watching.